Imagine you're about to speak in the meeting, or you're introduced to a new person, or that few seconds right before the workout or the training round starts. Your heart rate goes up, you start sweating, or you freeze up. Why is that even happening? Why is that happening to you when nothing even started yet? Why your body reacts before you even think? Today, I'm finally breaking down everything behind fight, flight, and freeze reactions. Once you understand this, you will never look at your training and life the same way again. My name is Paolo, and today I'll give you deep insights into the processes that are happening to us every day, pretty much all the time, and we might not be even aware of it. I will show you how you can step inside of these processes and regulate yourself and take control over your mood, arousal, control anxiety, or even to avoid depression. This concept is taken from book Polyvagal Theory by Dr. Porges and developed by Julien Pineau, the strong fit guy. So credit to both of them. On daily basis, we are dealing with stress. It can be from some asshole honking at you in the traffic to giving a presentation, or even just managing relationships on the personal level in our personal life. It all is demanding and it takes effort. And as the day progresses and we get more tired and more fatigued, we can find ourselves to reacting more and more only purely on our instincts. And there is a reason for that. On biological level, this is all recognized as threat. Our nervous system and hormonal systems, they cannot tell whether it's life-threatening or not, whether there is a real danger of a physical harm. We are sending signals that this danger is as real as it gets, and that's all that matters. We eventually can basically switch into a mode when we make our biology systems to think that we are fighting for survival. Our brain developed in an environment where possibility of harm was extremely high, and we adapted. Our core root part of the brain, called brain stem, or sometimes called the reptilian brain, is what is responsible for pretty much only maintaining our biological functions. It also tries to conserve energy as much as possible. This is our freeze mode. It is part of parasympathetic nervous system because the point is to conserve energy, not to give energy, and basically it means playing death. It basically means I ran out of the resources and I'm here pretending I am dead just so I can survive. Later on in evolution, we've wrapped another part of the brain around this, and that's our limbic brain. That's our emotional brain. The simplest way to explain it is reward and punishment system. Our dogs and up to 3 to 4 year old, basically our kids are running on this limbic brain predominantly, where if you do something good, you are rewarded. If you do something bad, you are punished. And that's how you learn, based on the emotional response from the environment. This is our sympathetic fight and flight mode. Here, it's about expenditure of the energy. We are giving energy away. Either we are fighting and trying to dominate, or flight, escape, trying to hide or run away from the danger, which also takes some resources. And then third part of the brain is our neocortex. That's the newest part of the brain, and that's the part thanks to which we can have society as we have it. Before we fight or run away, we communicate. We are in a more cognitive mode where we think before we act. That's our flow, and again, the conservation of the energy is the key, because we don't want to spend too much unless it's necessary. That's why talking before fighting is always a better option. Not always, most of the time it's better option. Neither of these modes are bad. Flow, fight, flight, freeze are just functions, and we need them all. We need them for learning, we need them for development, and we need them for functioning. What is bad is if we are chronically stuck in one of them, or if we are not aware of where we even are and having no control of where do we want to actually get. how do we even recognize where we are? These modes can be pretty confusing, overlapping, and also we might be switching between them fairly fast. And the other thing is that people like to see themselves somewhere else, and they trick themselves into thinking that they're somewhere, but the reality is different. So first step is to be brutally honest with yourself, and then there is a simple guide to go by. Flow is about feeling. Fight is about pure action. Flight is about thinking and, in a sense of overthinking and overanalyzing everything that is happening. And freeze is there is nothing. We are just dead to the environment. We are not reacting in any significant way. Now, this is just a simplified guide, and it doesn't mean that if you are in a fight mode, you can't think, or if you are in a flight mode, you can't feel, or if you are in a flow mode, you can't think as well. That's not how it works. It's what is the dominant aspect, what is actually happening dominantly. Are you chilled, calm, everything is under control, and you're not feeling any stress? Or are you trying to be chilled and calm, but you have 1,000 thoughts and you're trying to frantically organize everything? Everybody can naturally sense there is a big difference between these two. It's all about these tiny nuances and internal processes. Observing what does this situation that I'm experiencing right now feels like. What is this all about? Is a good start to start realizing what's going on. We are not victims of these states. We can first recognize them, and then if we know how to, we can manipulate ourselves to switch between them as we like. There are multiple methods, and it all starts with breathing. The fastest and the simplest way is to observe our breathing and then eventually breathing intentionally so we can manipulate where we go. If somebody has a nice, long, deep breathing through the nose, that's really strong representation of the flow state. If there is mouth breathing or panting, that is signaling there is either fight or flight happening. Inhale is naturally putting us into alert state, while exhale is very calming. So if we go nose breathing only and we prolong the exhale intentionally, we can get into the flow state by our action. At the same time, we can use our receptors that are on the lips and push the slow exhale through the lips, like we want to very gently blow into a feather. This will push us towards the calm flow state. On the other side, if somebody wants to get hyped, well, just hyperventilating through the mouth might be an option. However, don't push it too far, because if you do it too much and too intense, you can actually get a panic attack from that. And the panic attack is actually flight mode being pushed to the extreme. Another way of manipulating and moving through the states is through our food that would not have an immediate or not as fast effect as the breathing, but it definitely has a strong effect. Carbs are triggering our sympathetic nervous fight and flight system through the signaling in the gut flora. We have millions and probably billions of bacteria in our gut, and a healthy adult has around 3 to 4 kilos of only these bacteria in our gut. And through the back part, dorsal part of our vagus nerve, these bacteria are signaling of what's going on in the gut directly to the brain. And if you eat carbs, it has different effect on you than if you eat protein, because different bacteria will be more activated by that type of food you are eating. Carbs will push you to sympathetic, protein is more calming, and it will push you more into parasympathetic. That's why the consumption of both at the same time is not really great idea, especially not in high amounts. That's why people many times feel very sluggish and brain foggy, but at the same time weirdly activated right after lunch or dinner when they had both together, protein and carbs. It's just sending mixed signals of what is going on. Sleep is also a big part of the regulation, well, mainly because the most parasympathetic resting flow activation is happening when we sleep. And you can definitely relate to the fact that it's way harder to fall asleep and get there into the deeper resting state if you are angry. Well, because you are activated and you're on the opposite side of the spectrum. If you're fighting in your head or you have virtual fights, you're not going to fall asleep easily. You need to calm down first, for example, through the breathing. Also, lack of sleep or bad sleep can create an irritability and imbalance in these systems because you didn't get enough rest, so the parasympathetic wasn't expressed enough. There'll be a mismatch and it's just going to affect your whole following day. Training is absolute king in state manipulation. When we train, we are actually possibly getting through all the stages of this hierarchy of flow, fight, flight, and freeze. You can imagine it in your workout, your sparring or whatever training. When you start, you are moving, you are flowing. Eventually, there is a little bit switch where you are demanded to push through more and it's becoming harder and harder, and you would definitely at that moment don't describe that you are just flowing through it. Eventually, you might get to a point where you're switching between fight and flight, and that's that quitting moments where you really don't want to be there anymore, but you kind of are there, and then you're going back and forth. Maybe the coach is yelling, go harder, so you're scared of him, so you go back to the workout again or back on attack. And eventually, if it just goes for too long, at the end, you're lying back flat to the floor and being completely dissociated. That's your moment of freeze happening because you pushed really far. Knowing these states, recognizing them in training, and having tools to switch from flight back to flow or possibly to fight, and flowing through it, recognizing the states on its own, that's the key of learning the proper manipulation and then eventually applying it to our daily life. However, there is one more tool that I really like for understanding, and that is ice bath. When you do ice bath, pretty much everything I described now in the training will be probably happening the same or similar way, but internally in your head. There's not going to be much of a physical expression, well, because you are in the ice. However, there is one big difference. In the training, if you really don't want to push, you will not push. In ice, you don't have an option because that discomfort and that threat is pushed on you externally. In training, you are regulating the intensity, but you can't regulate the intensity of what ice is doing to you when you're sitting there. So the only option there is to focus on the breathing, and if you do it well, eventually after 1.5 to 2 minutes in the ice bucket, you will find a moment where you dissociate the pain from the emotion. You will still be cold, it will still be painful, but you'll be able to just sit there, be calm, not lying to yourself. Sit there, be calm, and knowing that, yes, it sucks, but I'm okay with it. That's when you win. When you want to learn how to manipulate yourself into a different neural state, start with awareness and start with breathing. The breathing is a two-way street. If we are exposed to a very rough situation, our breathing will change. And then we can use the breathing to bring ourselves where we want to be. I will repeat it again. Slow exhale is calming. That's all you need to remember. Slow exhale. When you are training, be mindful, observe yourself, what is happening, which situation is pushing you where, and eventually you'll be able to shift where you want to be. Also, you can start watching people around you because their eyes and face expression and the way they breathe can tell you a lot about the state they are in. These principles really apply to everyone and everywhere, and now you will not be able to not see it anymore. You will start noticing it and you will start building your capacity to understand the system deeper. I need to overemphasize one detail. Even if it would seem that flow and fight are the states we want to be in, they are not necessarily a destination we want to reach. Ultimately, we want awareness and ability to shift on demand. If somebody is in fight all the time, well, it still is a sympathetic overload and it's very taxing for energy resources, and eventually it's only theoretical, eventually he would go into the flight or even freeze, because you just can't push like that forever. Being in a flow all the time would lead to something like a very passive way of living, because whenever we want to achieve something, we need that drive and we need the action, which is in fight. Chronically staying in flight is constant overthinking, constant overanalyzing. It's very demanding for energy resources. It's very taxing on our psychological health, and it eventually can lead to anxiety. When we are in flight mode, we are lacking how. We don't know how to deal with stuff. We have thousands of thoughts, ideas. We just can't really come into conclusion how to deal with everything. It is a lack of capacity to deal with stuff that is coming to us. And chronic freeze is something what clinically would be called depression. There is a lack of why. Why would I even get out of the bed? Why would I even do or try something? It's just general dissociation from life. So we need to be able to recognize what is happening and then get ourselves somewhat surfing in between these modes according to the demand of the situation we are in. That is why training and, for example, the cold exposure or just looking for discomfort are so important in life, because in controlled environment we can experience these states in a higher intensity, and then we'll be able to recognize them in our daily life, and we will learn through that training and proper breathing and so on how to get where we want to go. And eventually that will make our life easier and more enjoyable. This is not a way of avoiding problems. This is about a place where problems are not bad, they just are, and we are capable and ready to deal with them. Thank you for watching. My name is Paolo. Please send this video to anybody who you think would like to hear this, or you want them to hear this. And if you have any questions or comments, comment under the video or reach out directly to me. See you next time.